Davidson. So I work for Cancer Focus Northern Ireland as a health promotion officer. Today, the presentation is focusing on being UV aware. So firstly, what is cancer? So the word cancer is used to describe an uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells in the body. It starts when the DNA in one single cell becomes damaged. And the damaged DNA may then cause the cells to divide and grow at an uncontrolled rate. As the cells continue to multiply, they form a mass of abnormal cells called a tumour. There are over 200 different types of cancer, and skin cancer is one type. And again, as I said, it is an uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells in the skin. So this happens when DNA damage is caused to skin cells, most often as a result of exposure to too much ultraviolet radiation from the sun or sunbeds. So skin cancers can grow slowly, and it can take some years before a cancer is noticed. But sometimes a skin cancer can grow very quickly within a few months, and some forms of skin cancer can become life-threatening if they aren't diagnosed and treated in the early stages. So skin cancer is the most common form of cancer. It's more common than lung cancer, breast cancer, or bowel cancer. Each year, more than 4,000 people here are told they have skin cancer. That is at least 11 people every day. So, and every day or every year, the number of skin cancers are increasing. So why are the skin cancer rates increasing? So there's a couple of factors that do contribute to this. And so you have more travel abroad on sunshine holidays. So I know that has been, limited a wee bit just with COVID and things like that, but things are picking up again and getting back to a wee bit of normality. So as a result, there was more accessible budget air travel and exposure to short bursts of intense UV rays on sunshine holidays, for example, in summer and in winter. So this is thought to be linked to an increased risk of the most serious form of skin cancer. There's also the increased availability and use of sunbeds. So in Northern Ireland, there are currently around 300 to 400 sunbed premises, along with the availability of hiring sunbeds at home. So research does show that sunbed use is linked to an increased risk of skin and eye cancer. So this risk increases each time you use a sunbed and is higher if you start using a sunbed before the age of 35. So what is UV? Ultraviolet UV is a form of electromagnetic radiation given out by the sun and sunbeds. So unlike the heat and visible light given out by the sun, we can't see or feel UV radiation. So there's two main sources of UV radiation. So that's the sun and artificial tanning devices. So overexposure to UV radiation is closely linked to an increased risk of developing skin cancer. So what is the UV? So ultraviolet radiation is given out by the sun and it's made up of 3 wavelengths. So you have UVA, UVB and UVC. So UVC is absorbed by the ozone layer and it doesn't reach the Earth's surface. UVA and UVB are the rays that cause damage to our skin, and both can cause tanning, burning, aging, wrinkling and skin cancer. UVB is responsible for the majority of sunburns. So its intensity varies by season, location and time of day. So the highest levels of UVB usually reach us between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock from March to October. And then you have your UVA rays. So these penetrate deeper into the skin. It ages the skin, but it contributes much less towards sunburn. So UVA rays are present all year round and they can penetrate glass and clouds. So we are exposed to large doses over our lifetime. So I think this is quite realistic for our weather in Northern Ireland. It is unpredictable and we don't have the warmest or sunniest weather, yet despite our changeable weather, skin cancer is the most common form of cancer in Northern Ireland. Our weather can be unpredictable, so spring and summer can bring both heavy rain and bright sunshine. this can mean we mistakenly think that we only get a low level of sun exposure in Northern Ireland, or the sun here isn't strong enough to damage our skin, which isn't the case. So I suppose we want you to think about the UV and not the temperature. So your UV isn't related to air temperature. So we can't see or feel UV rays. So I'm not sure, some of you may be familiar with the UV index. You know, you can get it on the Met Office app and things like that as well. So this was developed by the World Health Organization, and the UV index shows how much UV radiation reaches us from the sun, and it tells us when the UV radiation from the sun is strong enough to damage our skin. So the UV index, it takes into account the height of the sun in the sky, the altitude and the cloud coverage. At night, the UV index is 0, and it rises during the day, peaking around lunchtime, so sort of between 12 and 1 o'clock, and then it falls again in the afternoon and evening. When the UV index is 3, the UV rays are strong enough to damage our skin and eyes, and we need to protect ourselves. So as I said, you can't see or feel the UV, so always remember that the sun's UV rays can be harmful on a cool, cloudy day as on a warm, sunny one. So even on an overcast day in Northern Ireland in summer, the sun is still there behind the clouds, and it's still capable of causing serious damage. So what is the UV level today? So if anybody wants to find out, if you want to, you can take a wee photograph of this QR code, and this will take you directly to the Met Office website, and it will indicate what the UV level is for today. So it is important to keep track of it where you are in order to keep your skin protected from UV damage. So the Met Office, as I say, you can get it from the web page or the weather app, and it's important to check it out where you are, and it will give you that wee bit of indication when you need to protect your skin. So when it's 3 or more, we need to protect our skin from UV damage. So skin damage. So some of the short-term effects of UV damage can start before our skin tans or burns. Skin exposed to UV rays can give you freckles and rashes, and too much short-term exposure causes sunburn, reddening, pain, and in severe cases, blistering and even second-degree burns. And I'm sure in everybody's lifetime, we have had somebody, you've had a burn at some stage throughout childhood or something like that, and nobody wants to experience that again. It really is very painful. But you also have then the long-term effects. So you have over time UV rays, whether you're exposed or not, you can get sunburnt, and it speeds up skin aging, making your skin dry, wrinkled, loose and dull, and it can cause pigment changes commonly known as age spots. It also causes changes in the skin cells, which may lead to skin cancer in later life. So I have mentioned a wee bit there just about sunbeds. But what they are, so they are artificial tanning devices, which include sunbeds, stand-up booths, and facial tanners. These devices are specifically designed to expose the skin to UV radiation. So most modern sunbeds can produce levels of UV radiation equivalent to the midday tropical sun. So sunbeds may emit a UV radiation of a UV index level over 11. So this is a level considered extremely high by the World Health Organization, and with UVA intensities well beyond anything emitted by the sun. So research does show that sunbed use is linked to an increased risk of skin and eye cancer. And as I mentioned, you know, every time you use a sunbed, it does increase your risk. But there are many misconceptions about the use of sunbeds. For example, they have been promoted as a way to top up vitamin D levels or having anti-aging effects. So scientific evidence doesn't support these claims. In some countries, sunbeds are banned. So for example, in Brazil and Australia, they are banned. But in Northern Ireland here, the sunbed legislation takes a different approach. It bans the use of sunbeds in commercial premises by under 18s, and it places a duty on sunbed operators to provide information on health risks to users and giving them the opportunity to make an informed choice. Malignant melanoma. So this is the most serious form of skin cancer. It's a cancer which can spread to other parts of the body, and it's potentially fatal if not diagnosed and treated early. It has been linked to exposure to short, intense bursts of UV rays. So sunshine holidays abroad and your sunbeds, and it can develop from an existing mole or a new mole. It affects almost 400 people each year in Northern Ireland, and it is the most common form of cancer in 25 to 49-year-olds. It's 30% more common in females than in males, and in women it more commonly occurs on the legs, arms and shoulders, and in men it more commonly occurs on the back, head and neck. And this is some images of what a potential malignant melanoma could look like. So if anybody does have anything like this, or we would encourage you just to get them checked out. So malignant melanomas can also occur under the nail bed as well. So as you can see from some of those images. So, you know, if you have anything like that, or if you friends or family, do encourage them to go to the doctors to get looked at. You then have non-malignant melanoma. So this is an uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells in the skin. It is the most common form of skin cancer. If untreated, it can cause significant damage to the local area of skin, which can be very disfiguring. In a small number of cases, it can spread to other parts of the body and be potentially fatal if undiagnosed or diagnosed late. It can look like open sores, scaly red patches, pink growths, shiny bumps or scars, warts or nodules which may crust or bleed. It is often associated with a higher lifetime exposure to the sun through working outdoors or participating in outdoor sports. It tends to occur on sun-exposed areas on the face, head, neck or hands. And this is what a potential non-malignant melanoma would look like. So again, if anybody has anything like this, we do encourage you to get that looked at. So skin and the sun. So this is the internationally recognized Fitzpatrick scale of skin type, and it's used to classify human skin's responses to UV radiation. So there's 6 different skin types. So those most at risk is skin type 1. So fair skin, which is fair skin that always burns, never tans. Skin type 2, fair skin that burns easily, tans minimally. Skin type 3 burns moderately, usually tans. Skin type 4 burns minimally, tans well. Skin type 5 very rarely burns, and skin type 6 never burns. So even just take a wee think of what skin type you are. Just take a second to think. And I suppose the best way when assessing your skin type is looking at skin that is not normally exposed to UV rays. So for example, the inside of the upper arm is a good area to look at to give you an indication of what skin type you actually are. So there was a recent study carried out in Northern Ireland and it highlighted the major differences in what skin type we think we have and which skin type we actually have. So 60% of people believe themselves to be skin type 3 or above, and over 30% stated they were skin type 5 or 6. The reality is that the vast majority of the native population in Northern Ireland have either skin type 1 or 2. So we're a wee bit like Ed Sheeran or Katy Perry. So we're all a wee bit pasty and white. So skin type is genetically determined and it will not vary over time. Many of us have naturally pale skin that can only produce a relatively small amount of the pigment melanin, and it has a limited ability to protect itself from UV damage. So skin cancer can affect anyone, regardless of skin type. However, skin types 1 and 2 are more at risk from the effects of UV radiation than others. So there are some other risk factors for skin cancer. So if you've had a history of repeated sunburns, Also your age. So for example, children's skin is particularly sensitive to UV rays, and a significant amount of our lifetime sun exposure does occur in childhood. One severe sunburn in childhood can double the risk of malignant melanoma during your lifetime. Sunbed use significantly increases the risk of malignant melanoma, especially if you use it before the age of 35. Also, if you have a large number of moles, so if you have between 50 to 100 moles or more, or you have multiple unusual moles, for example, if they're large and uneven colour or have an irregular border, it can indicate a higher risk of developing malignant melanoma. Also, if there's any family history or someone who's previously had a melanoma, it does affect both genders, but malignant melanoma is more common in females, and non-melanoma skin cancer affects both genders, but again is more common in males. Also, if you have a reduced immunity through being on certain medication or having an organ transplant, it can increase your risk. And if you have any chemical exposure or any severe burns, again, that can be a result and can increase your risk of skin cancer. So what to look out for? So early detection of skin cancer is very important. So you should check your skin about once a month. You should get someone to help check your back. And for example, if you do have a lot of moles or anything like that, I do encourage you to take a photograph of them, particularly if they're in an area that you can't see easily. So on your back or on the soles of your feet or anywhere at all that you just can't see properly, get a picture of them taken and get the picture printed out. Write the date in the back of it and also the size of the mole, and if you think it's changing and things like that, write down the colours of it and everything. It just means that in a month's time or 6 weeks, you can have a look at it again and do the same thing. It just builds up a bit of a picture if you do go to the doctors and say, look, you feel that this mole is changing. So some of the signs and symptoms do include a new growth or a sore that does not heal in 3 to 4 weeks, a sore that continues to itch, scab or bleed, or an unexplained continued ulceration. It would be something that we would encourage you just to get checked out. So what to look out for? So this is the ABCDE check. So I'm sure maybe some of you may be familiar with it and things like that. But so you have the asymmetry. So looking at the size and things of it and the shape. So the border, if the border is different shapes, if there's 2 or more colors present in it. So if there's any red, blue, black, anything like that, I encourage you to get that checked out. Also the diameter, and if you are concerned, we encourage you to get expert advice. So getting an appointment with the doctor and getting them to check it as well, and then you may be referred on for dermatology or something like that. Now, there are some benefits of sunlight. Everybody does love to see that wee bit of brighter day or the sun peeking through the curtains in the morning. It does put everybody in better form. But it is important to prevent that overexposure to UV radiation in order to protect our skin. But it is good to get some exposure to sunlight. For example, in better weather, we are more likely to be active outdoors, which is good for our health. And vitamin D is produced by the action of sunlight on the skin. So vitamin D is thought to be useful for reducing the risk of osteoporosis, and it's linked to a healthier immune system. Between March and October, fair-skinned people only need a few minutes of UV exposure on a regular basis to top up their vitamin D levels. So the length of time does vary from person to person, but it is less than the time it takes for skin to become pink or red. So usually they talk about 10 to 15 minutes is sufficient to get enough vitamin D levels for that. So UV exposure does affect the production of hormones, which influences our mood, and it does give us the feel-good factor when the sun shines. So enjoy the sun, but enjoy it safely. So we've mentioned a wee bit about being UV aware. So when the UV index is 3 or more, the UV rays are strong enough to damage our skin. The QR code is down on the bottom of the screen again here, if you can see it. Do feel free to take that picture, check it out where you are today, even if you're heading away for the day or you're going to be outdoors a wee bit more than normal. It's a good idea just to keep an eye on that, particularly between March and October when the UV rays would be at their strongest. So what can you do to prevent UV damage? So when the UV index is 3 or more, protect your skin and eyes and use a combination of ways to prevent overexposure to UV rays, and don't just rely on the one method. So seek shade. So staying in the shade doesn't give you 100% protection from the sun's UV rays, but it is the most effective way to protect yourself. Between 11 and 3, the UV levels are highest, so try to avoid being outdoors for long periods during this time. Create your own shade, use canopies, umbrellas or tents, find a tree to cool down under, or go indoors for a break to organise indoor activities for the middle of the day. If you work outdoors, take your breaks in the shade. Also, again, with still a lot of people working at home and things like that, when the weather is better and it's a nice sunny day, you're tempted to take maybe the laptop outside to do a bit of work in the garden or something like that. Just make sure that you're well protected. If you have a tree or an umbrella, sit in under that just to give you that wee bit of protection. Also wear a hat. So hats provide the best protection for the face, neck and shoulders. Often maybe for like a broad brimmed hat, it does give you that better protection. But if you do prefer a baseball cap, be sure to use sunscreen on your unprotected ears and neck. Avoid hats that are made from fabric that you can see through, as they let the UV rays through. UV rays can scatter and reflect off some surfaces. So for example, if you're at the beach, they can reflect off the sand and the water. So you still need to wear your sunglasses and sunscreen as well as a hat. So for sunglasses, they help to protect the eyes and the delicate skin around them. They are particularly sensitive to UV damage. So check that sunglasses provide both UVA and UVB protection. Always buy your sunglasses from a reputable supplier and look out for the following. So ensure that it has a CE kite mark and that it does have the BS standard as well. Also, when you're buying them, check out for a UV 400 label and ensure that it has 100% UV protection. So just making sure that your sunglasses do give you protection at the side of your eyes. Maybe, for example, going for like a wraparound style that comes in a wee bit tighter around the eye, and it just gives you that bit of more added protection. Also cover up. So when the weather is warm and sunny, it is tempting to peel off the layers, but the best advice is to cover up and with loose, lightweight clothing. So fabrics with a tight weave. So for example, your cotton, it gives you a wee bit more protection. If you can see sunlight through the fabric, then the UV rays can get through. So maybe opting for some long sleeves, collars, trousers, or a long skirt, it does help to give you that bit more protection. Some clothing now has a UV rating. So for example, your children's clothing, sportswear, and some workwear does have a UV protection factor of 15 or higher. So it's a good idea, maybe even particularly for kids, or if you're in the water a lot, maybe trying to get something with that bit of protection in it as well. You then have your sunscreen. So sunscreen does not offer 100% protection from UV rays, and it should always be used on any exposed skin as an accompaniment to shade and protective clothing. Sunscreen needs to be broad spectrum, which means it provides both UVA and UVB protection. The sun protection factor of sunscreen indicates the level of UVB protection. The higher the number, the greater the protection. We should all use sunscreen with at least an SPF 15. The British Association of Dermatologists does recommend an SPF 30 or above, but if you have particularly pale skin or for children, would recommend going for a higher factor, so going for that SPF 50. And don't reduce the SPF as you can. So the star rating of sunscreen indicates the level of UVA protection. So you can see from the screen there, the 5 stars in the circle. So when you are buying a sunscreen, making sure that it is either 4 or 5 stars. And also for sunscreen that is manufactured in other countries, a label with a small circle containing the letters UVA indicates that it meets the EU standard for UVA protection. So for example, if you were buying your sunscreen when you're on holidays and things like that, just making sure that it does have that UVA circle on the back of it. So price or brand are not indicators of the level of protection. So always look for a minimum of an SPF 15 and a UVA 4-star or more. It's also worth noting that moisturizers and cosmetic products containing an SPF may not always contain a UVA protection, and as a result may not provide broad spectrum protection against UV damage. Sunscreen should be applied at least 30 minutes before exposure to the sun, and then reapplied every 2 hours after that, or after swimming or toweling or sweating. So research shows that we only apply 25 to 50% of the required amount, and that we often miss areas which are heavily exposed to UV rays. So for example, the back of our neck, temples, and our ears. The amount of sunscreen required per application depends on the product. So if it's a gel, a mousse, a lotion, or a spray. So manufacturers do provide details regarding their own products, but as a guide, for example, if you're using a lotion sunscreen, an average adult needs at least 36 grams or 6 full teaspoons for an all-over body application. And that just is a quick guide of roughly how much sunscreen you need to be applying to your skin. So I am just going to share a quick video with you of 2 local people who are sharing their story of skin cancer. So hopefully you will all be able to see it okay. So just give me 2 wee seconds and I will play it. Apologies, I think there's an ad on here first. So
your metabolism. With just one breath, Lumen.
Even though we don't have the sunniest climate here in Northern Ireland, skin cancer is our most common form of cancer and accounts for 30% of all cancers diagnosed here. In fact, on average, every day, 10 people in Northern Ireland are told they have skin cancer.
When I was younger, I lived abroad in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, where the sun's very strong, very hot. On numerous occasions, I was burnt very badly. Sun care wasn't a big priority for me then.
I enjoyed the idea of having a tan and always looking good, basically, you know, the tan made you look that bit better, and in all aspects you nearly thought it made you look slimmer. So sun factor was never an issue. I wouldn't have used a cream any higher than a factor 10, and sunbeds were a big part of my everyday life.
I had gone on honeymoon with my wife, and then coming back from honeymoon we visited my mother, at which point she had noticed it and said you should have that looked at. The sunspot itself had changed in shape and texture, had become scaly at that point. So when I returned, I went to my GP to have it looked at.
While on holiday in August 2010, I noticed on my thigh a dark, sort of unshapely mole. October it started getting sort of itchy and I was scratching it, and again thought, must go and do something about that, but it didn't actually go to the doctor till the start of November.
I was 33 when my GP confirmed my diagnosis of malignant melanoma, the most serious form of skin cancer.
In November 2010, aged 36, I was diagnosed with malignant melanoma.
It's really important to check your skin regularly, ideally on a monthly basis. Pay attention to any changes in size, shape or colour of an existing mole, the development of a new mole, or a patch of normal skin which starts to change. If you notice any of these changes, it's important to get them checked out by your GP.
Following the diagnosis, I had a feeling of numbness, of shock, not realising the severity of malignant melanoma. Then after the surgery was the easy part. It was done there and then, but the waiting was the most difficult part. The 3-month checkups, not knowing if the melanoma had spread, not knowing what the future held for myself, but also for my family.
I had accepted the news, but knew myself that the word cancer is a frightening word and thought, how'd I tell people at home?
I then had to go for a second surgery to ensure that all the cancer cells had been caught. The sunspot was about half the size of my small fingernail, and it was just slightly darker than a freckle. And then the initial incision was about 1 inch. And then following the second surgery, it was then taken to about 3 inches. And it was a kind of a large circular area where they had to pull in.
It was quite deep surgery. It took me off my feet for quite a while, and I think it amounted to around 70 stitches, which was a bit crazy considering it was the tiniest wee mole.
Thankfully, I didn't have to have radio or chemotherapy, just a program of regular checkups. Emotionally, I was very up and down. I would have been depressed quite often. I found it very challenging. But sun safety is a big part of my life now, not only for myself, but also for my 2 children, ensuring that they have sun cream or are covered up.
We got on with things, I got back to work. But then once I got back to work, realised, okay, I can't holiday for the first year. And then when I was looking into holidays the second year, I couldn't get travel insurance. You know, it was near treble the price of the holiday itself. I believed I had a dark skin type, so I believed that I didn't need sun factors. I was okay with using a sunbed. I now understand that that is completely wrong. I would advise people now to think twice before using a sunbed. And I know that my daughter will definitely never get the opportunity to use a sunbed.
I don't think people realise just how strong the sun is in Northern Ireland itself. It's the small things that you have to take into account.
Top tips for staying safe in the sun, whether at home or abroad, are to stay in the shade when the sun is strongest in the middle of the day, cover up with a t-shirt, and wear sunglasses and a hat. On any exposed skin, use sunscreen with at least sun protection factor 15 and a UVA star rating of 4 or more. Remember these top tips and check your skin regularly for any changes.
Early detection saves lives, it saved mine.
That was just a quick video of 2 local people's experience and their journey of skin cancer. So I think it sort of puts into perspective a wee bit when you hear somebody else talking about it and things. But that is the end of the presentation. So thank you very much, everybody, for logging on today. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to ask it in the chat box or to turn on